Hey, what's going on, guys? So Fantastic Four First Steps is a weird movie for me. Because, and I've said this before in videos and live streams, absolutely nothing about this movie appeals to me on paper. I don't like this being an MCU movie that's not part of the MCU, tangentially making it some multiverse bullshit, which I am sick of. In fact, I've been sick of it since 2015. I don't like this movie being a period piece set in the 1960s because, at least to me, it reinforces this narrative, and I would hear it all the time when I worked at a comic book store, and I would also see it on Reddit and Twitter and YouTube video essays. This narrative that the Fantastic Four belong in the 1960s because that's the last time those characters were relevant.
Shut your lame ass up, nigga.
Which, by the way, is a crock of shit because you'd hear the same arguments being made for Superman and how the only way that you can make a Superman movie is by setting it in the 1930s. Thank God for James Gunn breaking that curse. And then there was other stuff when the trailers started coming out and we started getting more press releases, and I was not into Eben Moss-Bacharach's take on a soft-spoken, gentle giant Ben Grimm, which I'll talk about in just a second. But there was also discussion about Johnny Storm being changed to be less problematic in a post-Me Too world. But, if you watch the movie, he's not. The only real change made to Johnny is that he's a competent scientist, which I liked. But again, I'll get to that. But yeah, just on paper, on a concept level, this was the last thing that I wanted from a Fantastic Four movie. And then I went to the theater and I actually sat down and watched it.
Gotta say, it's fantastic.
Alright, so I might regret saying this down the line, but that's a problem for future me to deal with. But just at this moment, this is how I feel after having seen the movie twice. Fantastic Four First Steps is not only, without a shadow of a doubt, the best Fantastic Four movie, this straight up might be one of the best Marvel movies. Period. And I'm not talking just about the MCU. I mean Marvel movies in general. Because this movie is unlike any other comic book movie or TV show. Okay, well, maybe not any other. I'm sure there's some others out there. I'm just not thinking about them right now. But this is a celebration of the Fantastic Four's comic book history and mythology in a way that I can't really think of any other comic book movies and TV shows being for other characters. And before comparing this to any other comic book movie or TV show, I'd say that the thing that this puts me in mind of the most is Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's All-Star Superman. Because All-Star Superman is, for all intents and purposes, the quintessential Superman story. It's a self-contained greatest hits album of Superman's, at the time, 60-plus year history. And that's more or less what this movie is for the Fantastic Four. It's not really an adaptation of any one particular story. It's more so just a celebration of the Fantastic Four's comic book mythology. Specifically, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee's Fantastic Four. Because, there are some nods here and there to Hickman's run with the Future Foundation and The Bridge. There's also a lot of Alex Ross and Kurt Busiek's Marvels here. There's even a little bit of Ultimate Fantastic Four with how Sue Storm is approached, where she has more agency and she's more or less the team anchor and she's the voice of the Fantastic Four, which I thought Vanessa Kirby did a great job of conveying. But again, this is more so a love letter to Jack Kirby and Stan Lee's run more than anything else. So the movie opens with the Fantastic Four as a firmly established institution. They've been around for 4 years, because of course they have. They've gone on adventures. They already have a rogues gallery, which is established in a few quick lines of dialogue, which, by the way, is a thing that I've been saying for years superhero movies should be doing, because it establishes an off-screen history and makes the world feel lived in. And it's just very weird to me that we have, a million of these things now, and the only other movies besides this one to really do that are the Spider-Verse movies. So, I don't know. That's just something that I really appreciated. Yeah, I also liked the few blink and you miss it scenes showing the Fantastic Four in their original Jack Kirby costumes. The first is when they're fighting the Mole Man and he's getting arrested, and the second, I think, is when they're fighting Giganto. I do wish we got to see more of them, especially after seeing how good they look in that one behind the scenes selfie with the main cast. But there was a lot of stuff in this movie that was cut out. Seemingly so much that I'm genuinely surprised that it came out as cohesive and good as it is. That said, despite being an established classic comic booky world, the Fantastic Four aren't exactly a one-for-one for their comic book counterparts. And this is a not-so-blink-and-you-miss-it piece of world building, but the Fantastic Four as we know them in pop culture, and comics and movies and TV shows and stuff like that, that exists, but as an in-universe dramatization of the fake real-world Fantastic Four. So the whole, I'm Aunt Petunia's blue-eyed, ever-loving, clobbering-time nephew, like that is a cartoon character based on Ben Grimm. And the same goes for everyone else, which I think sort of justifies Joseph Quinn's Johnny Storm being a lot more laid back and less of an over-the-top, loud-mouthed, sexist cartoon character like in the comics and the video games. You know, he's still Johnny Storm. You know, he still has that skirt-chasing reputation, and he leaps before he looks. But again, he's not Chris Evans in the Tim Story movies. You know, he's not a cartoon character. In fact, that's a bit of a change that I really liked about this movie, you know? Like making Johnny, despite his personal flaws, still a competent astronaut and a scientist. And overall, I like the Fantastic Four and Matt Shakman's take on those characters and their voices. Again, I really like Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm. I thought she was excellent. I know some people don't like Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, but I don't know, I thought it was a pretty good read. I feel like of the four of them, Reed is the hardest to fuck up. He's literally autistic science man. Like, if you can get that down, you've got Reed Richards. And I think everyone who's played Reed Richards has done a good job, and Pedro Pascal also did a good job. So, I don't know. I don't see the problem here. Now, as for the movie itself, 4 hours into this movie review, I like how it doesn't follow the typical MCU superhero action movie 3-act structure. If anything, it's a relatively slower paced science fiction cosmic horror story, which I thought was really fitting for the Fantastic Four. This is a world where these scientists have essentially become gods among men. You know, they've turned the 60s into a Jetsons futuristic wonderland. They've conquered nature with the power of teleportation and interstellar space travel. Like, they've gotten to the point where even fighting supervillains has gone beneath them. Because Reed gives the police weapons and tools to fight bad guys so that they can focus on, you know, their family and scientific pursuits. So, being faced with the reality of an actual literal cosmic god in the form of Galactus really shakes the foundations of their hubris, and I thought that made for some pretty excellent storytelling, because the latter half of this movie is just them trying and failing to prevent the inevitability of Galactus eating their planet, which, to be fair, I can understand being a little off-putting for people who went into this expecting more action and wanting more of a spectacle, because this is, at the end of the day, a superhero movie, and that's what people expect from a superhero movie. But again, I personally appreciate how this avoids being an action movie. And it's not like there's not action in it, like there definitely is, but it's more focused on the existential dread of these people reconciling with their place in the universe, and how genuinely terrifying that is. Which, incidentally, I think made the action a little more memorable because of how sparse it is. I also like Julia Garner as Shellaball. She was everything I think Silver Surfer needs to be. I still wish she was bald. You know, I think that just would have made her look a little more uncanny and alien. But as is, she's somber, she's menacing, she's dude, she's Silver Surfer. And, you know, after having seen the movie, I get why they gender bent Silver Surfer. It literally just gives Johnny Storm something to do and be relevant to the plot. So he serves that Alicia Masters role from the comics, where instead of having Alicia, you have Johnny be the one who appeals to the Surfer's humanity. And speaking of, I did think it was a little weird at first not having Alicia Masters in this movie, especially if you're like more or less using the coming of Galactus as your narrative anchor and you're giving Ben Grimm a potential love interest. But then I later found out that the character of Rachel Rosman is supposed to be a tribute to Jack Kirby's wife, Roz Goldstein, which is genuinely just one of the most touching things in this movie, as Ben Grimm was, for all intents and purposes, Jack Kirby's self-insert character for the Fantastic Four.
Are you crying? What's that? Are you crying? Am I crying? No, I'm not crying. You're crying.
I will say, if I have one complaint, it's the CGI. Because sometimes that shit is magnificent and flawless, like in the interstellar black hole chase sequence. But then you'll randomly just get a scene that looks like this. Granted, all of the scenes with shoddy CGI are with Franklin and Reed, and in the baby's case, I don't know what the issue was, but there's one scene in particular with Franklin near the end that looks really bad. Like, Pedro Pascal is holding like a plank of green wood or something, and you can tell that baby is airbrushed in post. It's that bad. And then there's the stretching with Reed, and look, I don't know. I think that just might be one of those weird powers that is impossible to visualize on screen without looking weird. Like, it never looks good, regardless of how technologically advanced we've become as a society. Because the scenes with Reed stretching here look about as good as they did back in 2015, which look about as good as they did back in 2005. But all in all, I thought this was great. You know, this felt like everything a comic book movie can be, and I really like Superman. You know, I like Thunderbolts. In fact, I think Thunderbolts is technically a better movie. But for me personally, this is everything I want from a comic book movie. And one of the major things here is that, now having seen it, I am 100% down with this movie not taking place in the MCU, because it really gives the story some breathing room and being a self-contained piece. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Fantastic Four First Steps. I loved it. I love the cast. I love their chemistry. I love the score. This is another certified Michael Giacchino banger. I love the costumes. I thought the cosmic sweaters were a really nice and much needed change of pace from the Brian Hitch commando chic that's had a vice grip on the balls of every costume designer that works on these damn things. And again, I like that this is a self-contained movie that's just a tribute to the Fantastic Four. Specifically Jack Kirby's Fantastic Four. But what about you? Have you seen the movie? Did you like the movie? Did you not like the movie? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button to support the channel. And if you want to see more content like this, all you gotta do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, take care, guys. Peace.